I like to be called Ricki by my friends. My name is Rose, and my name is Rose Terrace. My maiden name was Landau. I was born in 1938 in Antwerp, Belgium. I live now in Rancho Mirage. We live here in the desert since 1995, and we're very happy here. We made a good home. It has been very difficult for me to talk about my wartime experiences because, and it still is now, because I lost all my family except for my father. And I had to survive being a good child because I was hidden. Although I knew everything that was going on around me, I guess I was a precocious child. It was very difficult living without family for so many years. At times like today, it's difficult, and I don't know why today is difficult, but I tell my story here at the Tolerance Education Center to high school students and junior high school students, and I get such a nice feeling, a good feeling, because they look at me and they listen for however long it takes to tell my story, 45 minutes, an hour. They don't move, they don't cough, they don't sneeze, they don't touch each other, they don't giggle. Their eyes are wide open and they stare at me and they listen to every word, enthralled by my story. So it reinforces my feeling and makes me feel really good that they listen so well. My father took me, and we lived in Antwerp. I might have been 3 years old or so. And he took me with him, I don't know why, but he took me from Antwerp to Belgium, to Brussels rather, for the day or for 2 days. And while we were gone, my mother heard that a train coming from Brussels to Antwerp was going to be emptied by the Germans of all the Jews that were in that train. And she went to the train station for whatever reason, I guess to try and warn us, which was useless. She went there and she got arrested because she wore a yellow star, and we all had to wear that. And by some chance, by luck, my father took the next train with me, and we were not arrested. So when my mother was taken away, she never came back. She was sent to Auschwitz on a transport. I knew something was wrong. It was different. There was just my father looking after me. He was a furrier by trade, and it's cold in Belgium in the winter, and so he was still able to work underground at home. He cut fur, and I was his little helper during those days. I remember, I think I could make a fur coat if I had to. The next thing I remember, I don't know how long after my mother disappeared, but I think it was in the beginning of 42. They had a big deportation order to get rid of all the Jews in Antwerp. And I remember in the middle of the night banging on the door, and I heard Juden raus, which means in German, Jews out. So in our night clothes, I remember my father in his pajamas, I was in a little nightgown or something. We were told to leave our apartment immediately. And so he had me under his arm, and we had to go down the stairs. We couldn't use the elevators, and there were German soldiers at every landing with machine guns. And when we came down to the front door, the entrance to the building, I remember this, there were Klieg lights on the front door. And there were 2 trucks, and the Germans were saying, and I understood them. I spoke Flemish and Yiddish. And Yiddish, I could understand some German. To this day, it's easy for me to speak different languages. I understood that they wanted to separate the women and children from the men. The women and children were directed to one truck, an open truck, and the men were directed to another truck. And at that moment, with the Klieg lights on the front door, German soldiers all over the place with machine guns, my father made a decision. He thought that if we get separated, I will be dead for sure. So he decided to either get killed right away or not. And so he walked out the door, walked right, and turned a corner, and nobody saw us from all of the Germans and all the lights and everything. And we went to the home of a friend of his who was a policeman in Antwerp who hid us for a while. And many times I felt the presence of a higher being, because I wouldn't be here otherwise. Scared, frightened, can't make noise. You can't, there's nothing to play with. You're a kid. You have to be quiet. You can't cry. You can't, you have to sleep in a room that's darkened with black shades or black material over the windows. You can't go out. A very frightening feeling. But my father was with me then. He decided that after that he didn't want to leave a trace, and so we moved to Brussels. I don't remember how we got there, but we ended up in Brussels, which is a bigger city, and people there speak French. So I remember him telling me to forget Flemish, to forget Yiddish, and to speak French. And so I did. I learned it 1, 2, 3. The first place he put me, because he had to work to be able to feed him and me and to have some sort of roof over his head. So he couldn't keep me where he was, and I don't know why. But he brought me to a farm, and to hide me. And I remember the farmer had a wooden leg, and I was told not to make fun of that wooden leg. It seemed very strange, but he had a wooden leg, like in the Peter Pan movie, which now I know later, but at that time. And anyways, I had to wear a little scarf over my head, and little plain clothes, and black lisle stockings, and wooden shoes like they wear in Holland, because there was no leather. All the leather and the animals were taken by the Germans. So we wore wooden shoes, and I slept in an attic, and that attic had no windows. It was very scary, and I had to call the farmer father, because he was supposed to be my father. If someone came to the farm, he was my father. And when my dad came to visit once in a blue moon, I remember running up to meet him, and I was screaming in joy, and I was saying, "Here is my real father. Here comes my real father." And he would bring me, sometimes he would buy on the black market some butter. I remember him bringing some hard candy. Very few things, but I guess he must have not eaten himself to have bought this for me. The farmer and his family, he had a little girl also. That's all I remember, was a little girl, a little older than me, and his wife. They were not Jewish. I guess they did this altruistically. They got paid from my father as well, but I guess things were not really satisfactory to my father, because I don't remember staying there that very long. He took me to another place, and I remember the first thing that I think about when I remember that home was children crying and the smell of urine. It was a home of a nurse who kept 4 or 5 children, Jewish children. She was not Jewish. She did that strictly for the money. And it was chaos in her house constantly. A lady who came once a week there to get some sort of an injection from that nurse came in, and I think she fell in love with me. She asked her if she could take me. And the woman said, "Oh, I don't care, you can have her, but I need to tell her father where she's going to be." And it turned out that it went okay with my father, because I ended up with this lady and her husband, who were not Jewish either, and they had never had children. They were old enough to be my grandparents, and I really owe them my life. They kept me till after the war, and then some. One day, again, I don't know how old I was, but it was during the German occupation. Germans came to the door, and you have to open the door, and it was an officer and 2 soldiers. The soldiers had machine guns on them, and they came to search the house. And you were not allowed to have a gun in your house. It was forbidden by by death. You were shot right then and there if you had any weapon in your home. And we had a weapon. We had a little gun, handgun, in a cabinet, which was a library. It had books, and that gun was on the second row of the books, behind books. Anyways, the Germans came in. The soldiers started to search the house. We had a wood stove, a big wood stove, on which the cooking was done and heated the apartment. They took down the flue, and all this black soot went all over the house. And they couldn't find anything, and the soldiers were looking and turning furniture upside down, looking on the pillows and behind pictures. And one soldier came to the cabinet where that gun was, and Babun said to me, "Pray," she said in French, "pray." And I knew the gun was there. I knew that, no, I may not have known it was a gun, but I knew something was there that wasn't supposed to be. And the soldier put his hand on the handle of that cabinet to open it. And the officer said in German, understood him, he said, "Oh, there's nothing here, let's go." And so the soldier turned around and left, and we were saved one more time. There was nothing much to do. We had air raids, blackouts. The windows were dark at night, again with the same black material. No music. You couldn't have news. But somewhere I remember hearing news. I don't know if it was illegal and nobody knew, but I remember that. My father didn't come quite as often because he felt very secure of my being there, and I felt secure. I slept, as one thing, which was, the people didn't know the psychology we know today, and maybe we know too much, but I was put to sleep in a half floor upstairs from the main living area, and the door was locked behind her to keep me safe, or to keep someone from coming in. And it was and the window looked out to the backyard, and it was very cold in the winter. There was no heat there. And she would put a hot water bottle with hot water by my feet so I could fall asleep and be warm. But if I woke up during the night and the bottle was cold, I was very cold. And of course, I couldn't leave that room, so it made me feel imprisoned a little bit. Although she came in very early in the morning to get me, but that was not a good feeling. That was not good. I have to, there was something else which I remember about living there. We lived about, I would say, 5 or so blocks from a main railroad station. and it was being bombed. The Germans, either the Germans or the Allies, I don't remember, but that they tried to bomb that station so many times. And where we lived in that house with Bobon and Bon Papa, there was a humongous fireplace in one of the rooms. I mean, a fireplace that you could go into. And when there were air raids, we would all run in there and sit on a little stool, a little wooden stool, and we would play checkers to pass the time. I still have the checkers in a tin box. I don't know what happened to the checkerboard, but we would play checkers. I must have been 4 years old or something. Later on, and this is just jumping forward, I was sent in an orphanage for a year, and I wanted to play checkers with the girls in my dormitory, but nobody wanted to play because I was too good. So anyway, this is jumping forward. We would hear bombs. We would hear, and what I learned the names. I learned first there was V1s, and then there were the longer reaching V2s that the Germans sent. And the V2s, you would hear a whistle in the sky. It was Z number. And if you heard that, you knew that it was going further. It wasn't dropping on your house. But if you heard that whiz sound and it stopped, you ran under the chimney, under the fireplace, because you knew that it was landing somewhere near. But I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't scared of the bombs. I guess by that time I had learned that whatever happens, happens, and I have no control over it. Even as a child, you become an adult very quickly. You become wise very quickly. I stayed with these people. They saved my life, really. I stayed with them past the end of the war because my father looked for his wife who had disappeared, his parents, his wife's parents, all of the family through the Red Cross and so on, and had no place. I mean, Europe was destroyed. There was no place for a man to keep his small child with him and work. And so these people just were so glad to keep me. They would have kept me forever. So I stayed with them past the liberation, past 1945, until I was about 9 years old. I remember in 1945, I remember people jumping in the streets and dancing and flowers and singing after the liberation. And we all went to the main square in Brussels to celebrate, and people were jumping and kissing, and soldiers, the way you see it in the movies, that's exactly how it happened. And I continued to go to school, a school that was run by nuns, and they were very strict. They don't have playgrounds like in Europe, or, well, it's a cold country, so their playground is inside. It's covered, and it's small. It's a gym, about a gym, a small gym, and we had to walk in a circle for recess. And the nun in charge would have a little clicker that we use New Year's or for celebration, and it will click, 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 and we had to walk in time to these things. So my life until I was until after 10 was very controlled. And you had to be good, because if you weren't good, maybe the people wouldn't want to keep you and take care of you. So it's something that I've had to get over, speak my mind and complain when I'm not happy. It was difficult to get over that for a long time. By age 9, I was asking my father if I could do my communion because there were beautiful white dresses, and I had gone to Catholic school, and I knew catechism and all of that. And of course my father was horrified. Here is this one living child of two Jewish families who wanted to become Christian, and that was unheard of. So by then he had met another lady who had lost her husband, and she had a son who was 4.5 years younger than me. And they kept company, and that lady, she eventually became my stepmother, and my father married, and she adopted me, and my father adopted her son. And they thought that her son was kept in a during the whole war. He was born in 43, and he was kept in a convent by nuns, which strangely enough was right next door to where all the Jews were herded before their deportation. He was kept in that convent, and when he was about 5.5, and I was 9, my father and my stepmother, became later my stepmother, decided that we ought to learn a little bit about Jewishness, and put us in a place which was really an orphanage, where children, Jewish children who had lost their parents, who had been kept by other people, were put there to learn, not to learn, it was a way station on the way to Israel. Most of these children were then taken to Israel because they had no family. And we were there, my stepbrother and I. And again, I told my father later, many years later, that whatever possessed him to put me in an orphanage again after he was free, I was free. Why put me there? And of course, the poor man was devastated. He said, had he known that I was unhappy, he would never have put me there, but I had learned not to complain, so I didn't complain at the time. He felt so bad, but again, psychology then was non-existent, or they didn't realize the damage that they put their kids through, I guess, at the time. But that's okay. It did really nothing to me. I have a strong character, and what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. So now that I'm strong and I can tell my story, I tell my story to high school and junior high school students who are in the area here where we live, in the general desert area. And I tell them basically this story, and I'm so grateful I can do that now. And I conclude by telling them that if I came out of this as a strong person, and I was able to make a good life, go to school, get an education, have children, grandchildren, if I was able to make it, they live in the best country in the world. There's no reason that they can't achieve whatever they want to achieve, and to go for it. Just go for it. Don't let anything stop them. I encourage them, and they all come to see me after my speech, and they give me a hug, and they ask me if they can adopt me, and things like that. And it's very what's the word I'm looking for? I feel very grateful to these children for listening to me, and I hope I'm giving them good direction and good strength, and a mind to do and go after what they want to do. The students come here at the Tolerance Education Center, and at first when Anne, who is the director of education, asked me to tell my story, I couldn't. And I sat and listened in to other survivors tell their stories. And then my story didn't seem to be so hard to tell anymore. I tell that to children so that they become tolerant of different religions and different children, and children with handicaps, and children who are different. And in the end, we're all in the same boat. I tell them just that there is no difference. We all believe in a God. We see God perhaps in a different way, but it's the same being that looks after us and protects us, and they seem to get the message. The teacher asked me questions after my little speech, and The students ask questions, and it feels very good after I'm finished. I feel I've done something to enrich the children's lives and to give them hope for the future.